Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Russell Hunt, President of Multi-Hull Development, builders of the Buzzards Bay series of catamarans, and we've got an excellent example of Buzzards Bay 34 behind us. This boat is Moon Dancer. It's built for Bob Haynes of Westport, Mass, and it's built out as a commercial vessel. And so Stacy as a videographer and taking the wonderful pictures. We're going to walk through the boat, explain some of the spaces, and hopefully explain a lot more of our design, philosophy, engineering ideas behind this boat and what makes the Buzzards Bay so special. So welcome for the tour, and hope you enjoy it. Thank you. And we're in the back of Moon Dancer, Buzzards Bay 34. That's fit out as commercial boat. And Stacey, if you could pan the cockpit, you kind of get an idea of the space back here. It's a 12.5-foot beam. Fully enclosed pilot house boat, and still gives quite a lot of space back here. So on the Hawaii boats, of course, a bit of it would be filled in with seating. Now back here you've got your large cockpit hatches, which is very similar to the design that we're looking at on the ferry boats. And you've got a couple of commercial little dogs outfitted with gas struts, and a very nice gutter system that will drain a lot of water very quickly. This is through hull on this boat. It's a little undersized, but it's designed around 1.5 inch through hulls that will divert water overboard rather quickly. And again, you've got about a 2-inch gutter, about 3 inches deep, so pretty rugged there. And you can see the amount of storage in here when you have an outboard boat. With the diesel boat, this is where diesels would be, of course. The outboard boats, it's just, we call them lazarettes, just big open storage space here. And if you look forward with the camera there, Stacy, you'll see fuel tanks far forward. I'm just going to hop down there so I can narrate a little bit. Should I take it actually, or you? No. So you can see the fuel tank and the way it's bolted down. I'm going to be. All right, let me just. Will you have light? So here you've got the starboard fuel tank. So there's port and starboard fuel tanks. This boat is the same size as what we're looking at on the Hawaii boats, a pair of 110-gallon fuel tanks. And they're designed around our bolt-down system. You can see there's a welded aluminum flange, pretty beefy, welded on the aft, inboard and outboard sides, and forward. And we just through bolt that down to what we call a machine shelf, which also serves as the double bottom. And here, for this Yamaha setup, is power steering pumps. And back here, it's a good opportunity for you to see the lifting hardware setup, where you could actually pick the vessel up and say pull it off of a ship, or if you've got your tsunami warnings coming. And so we talked about building the boats with the same lifting hardware that this boat has, so a 2-point aft and probably a 2-point forward lift system. So here you can see this weldment, aluminum weldment back here, bolts to the very robust engine transoms. And it transfers this stress, which is through bolt and backing plates, right to the deck, where there's a big eye bolt that is just designed to attach for your sling. And when you don't need this, this will just get removed and you put in a stainless steel plug. And it'll always be ready. So I know you guys are interested in that feature. So Stacy, if you pan just forward a little bit, you see that that's the tail end of the double bottom of machine shell. And then we have this sump, actually, where you can see the actual hull bottom. And that's a good low point where we put our bilge pumps, where you've got your float switch, and where people put transducers. So that's your depth sounder transducer there. And then as you pan up, you see the actual engine transom. This customer chose to put their engine fuel filter there as well, not a bad spot, and also engine backing plates. And the transoms are about 2.5 inch thick, very solid, a lot of glass. Now we're in the forward space on Moon Dancer. Stacy's actually taking the video from the standpoint of the queen berth, which just sits on the tunnel. I'm standing in the hull. You see I have pretty good headroom here. This was a delicate balance designing this cabin setup, because they wanted the headroom, they wanted the space in the cabins, and the separate starboard and port companionway entries. But then you also had the requirement of having a walk around. having a depressed side deck walk around, which on the catamaran steals space from that headroom because I'm forced to be over the keels. But I think we walked that line pretty good. It's a game of inches, but it certainly works. I'm a big guy, 6 foot, 225 pounds, and I've got plenty of space here coming through, and wonderful side decks as you saw in some of that footage. So here I really wanted to show you, especially Steve, this machinery space access from the stateroom, both port and starboard, very similar to what we have designed for your boat. So in here on the starboard side, we're removing the stairs. Now, of course, on your boat, your design, there is no starboard companionway access. You'd just be coming across the berth and dropping down into the starboard hull. So, removing the stairs. And then we have just a starboard hatch that gives you access to the machinery space on the starboard side. That space forward of your starboard fuel tank. Now this is a space that's generally we've outfitted with the navigation electronics computers, your radar, your autopilot computer, your depth sounder, perhaps your battery charger, some of your more sensitive electronics. Now they're kept away from everything, from guests, from hardware being thrown around. But they're also quite protected. They're quite accessible. You have this hatch that's man-sized, and you can get right in there, get forward of your fuel tank, get access of your fuel tank side, but then also your electronics here. So Stacy, if you could get the camera in there and give them a nice shot of that. All right, so now you see the space forward of the starboard fuel tank. There's actually a lot of open space there. Great for storing spare parts, tools. And again, outboard or inboard hull side, perfect spot for fixing navigation electronics computers. The philosophy we have here is everything needs to be accessible. If you're going to work on it, you're going to inspect it, you're going to maintain the boat right, you're going to keep it safe, you need to get to it, and you can get to everything on our Buzzards Bays, recreational, commercial. We give you a lot of access. So on Moondancer, the owner chose to outfit his navigation electronics on the back, actually, of the helm. You can see that right from the stateroom. I don't believe he's going to do a cover. This is a commercial vessel. It's going to be him, so he's just going to have access to this. You could have a closet here with removable panels. We've done closets in front of these spaces, and then put a snap-in or zip-out canvas cover on the recreational boats. So again, give you that quick access. But again, on this yacht, to cover this so nobody, the ladies, go in there, they're reaching in for their sweater, they're not worried about getting their hands in wiring or anything like that. But again, all very nice, neat installation of wiring and just good solid hardware. All right, so we're in the wheelhouse of the Buzzards Bay 34 Moondancer. And it's middle of summer and it's hot and humid, so I'm a little bit of a sweaty beast, so you'll have to forgive me for that. But I really wanted to show you from this vantage point the sheer size of this 34-footer. We're in a massive wheelhouse. It looks like it belongs to a 50-footer. See the width of it, we've got room for side-by-side STID 500s here. We've got a massive dash with about a 20-inch, maybe 22-inch Furuno display, glass bridge. We've got the vertical commercial wheelhouse design with bent radius glass, bedded in, flush glass all around, both fore and aft. So the visibility is pretty unparalleled. And even the visibility, Stacey, if you could pick that up, the ocular clarity of that bent glass through that radius. Now that's about a 12 or 13-inch bend radius we designed there, and it just looks wonderful. I mean, you're not going to lose anybody in a mullion on that side. And again, here I was standing in front of the port companionway that heads down to the head. But just a good big ship's bridge here. It really feels like a big boat. Again, you feel like you're a big boat because of the ride qualities. It feels like a big boat because of the silence of the four-stroke outboards that are out back. It sounds like a really big boat. And yet you're on this 34-footer that's easy to manage, easy to handle, easy to single hand. It's just such a versatile vessel. The owner is definitely looking forward to getting this in the water, and it's going in this week. Okay, so here we're at the bow of the Buzzards Bay 34 Moon Dancer. And this shot, this is what I always show people when I'm first trying to explain our designs, what we're focused on as far as sea-keeping ability, how we go about doing it. And this is really what, in large part, makes it all work. So you see these very fine, tall bows. Again, I'm 6 feet. Very fine, tall bows. A very sharp entry. And you can see here, you got this lower chine, lower spray chine. It's very much like a planing hull design. And the idea is when the bow plunges and that lower chine, it's developing lift, but when that lower chine gets below the water's surface, well then there's nothing to knock down the spray, the windblown spray. And so that's where this upper, what we call the topside chine, comes into play to try to make it drier. But then also add more lift and add some reserve buoyancy. As you're flying along, especially in a following sea, and you're plunging deep in the back of the waves running 20-25 knots, we pick up buoyancy, we pick up lift gradually, but certainly of enough quantity to keep our tunnel, our big flat area, from slamming. See this big broad mouth, this big tunnel. It's got a shape that gently angles up. We do that very gentle slope so that on the rare occasion when it does actually come in contact with a wave, all it starts to do is just pop the boat up. It doesn't slam it, doesn't cause big deaccelerations like the typical cat that tried to push their accommodations too far forward, causing a very abrupt angle of sweeping up to the sheer with their tunnel. This is so gradual, it's just like a skiff suspended 3 feet, 4 feet in the air. So it does just pick up very gradually. So to go back to the individual hulls, you see this is what we call a high-speed displacement hull. So it's a displacement hull shape, again, very fine. It develops very little lift, but it's high speed in that it goes way beyond the normal limitations of displacement hull shape. So it certainly goes into the planing zone as far as speeds. This boat, powered with a pair of 300 Yamahas, is going to be 40 plus miles per hour. And then maybe we can just get a pan again and see that tunnel. And give you an idea, the waterline's about here, about where my hand is here. So we've got about 2.5 feet of distance tunnel here. And then the tunnel it slopes down, but pretty gradual. And so it gets down to about 22 inches. Now I can actually go on a sit-on-top kayak and kayak right through the tunnel of a Buzzards Bay 34. That gives you an idea of how much tunnel clearance we have. And that's the whole key. If you're going to have a displacement hull shape that's very fine, that's going to stay down in the seas at higher speeds instead of leaping and slamming, in order to keep you from slamming into those waves with the tunnel, you have to have that tall tunnel clearance. So very fine displacement hulls that stay down in the sea, but a tall tunnel clearance that avoids the wave impact. That's the key for ride comfort, and that's what we do. All right, so now we've come around to the transom of the Buzzards Bay 34 Moon Dancer. And I wanted to show you, in particular, the displacement hull shape. Again, earlier we talked, when we were at the bow, of the high-speed displacement catamaran hull shape that we've come up with. And this really kind of illustrates what that really means. So you see our hull bottom here. It's still very much, even all the way aft here, it's still very much a displacement hull shape. There's very little flat lift producing sections that could slam in a seaway. We do have a sort of a flattened U shape back here that really occurs at sort of the back quarter, back third of the vessel. If you can think of a kayak with the back third sort of cut off and squared off, that's essentially what we have here. So again, we've got these U-shaped sections that produce a little bit of lift, but again, mostly we are ridding ourselves of any slam-producing lifting sections here. And then we have a continuation of our planing style chine here for, again, some lift, but also for knocking down spray. Now again, to give you an idea of our tunnel clearance here, the water line underway, I'll say static water line is about here, about a 1 inch of chine immersion. And when you're underway, you're about 1 inch chine immersion because we're just displacement hull shape, stays the same. Which gives us about 22 inches of tunnel clearance here. So this is what I was talking about before, which might have sounded a little crazy that on the sit-on-top kayak, I can kayak right through it. We actually have had one owner at a shark rendezvous in a very busy moorage or anchorage that some young hooligans got a hold of a little inflatable boat, high-speed inflatable boat, and in the middle of the night, while he was at anchor and sleeping on his berth right over the tunnel, actually shot right through under the tunnel of his Buzzards Bay. Again, gives you an idea of our more than adequate tunnel clearance to allow the displacement hull shape to run faster in rougher seas without coming out of the water. Now, if you've got a high-speed monohull planing boat, I don't care how deep a V section you have, even the V section bottom cats, no matter how sharp a V you make that, if it leaves the water's surface, when it comes down, it's still flat. It's got those flat lift-producing sections. It's going to slam. It's going to cause high vertical accelerations to the occupants. It's going to cause uncomfort, banging, noising, all that stuff. But if you've got our high-speed displacement hull shape catamaran, it stays down in the seas. You can run longer, you can run faster in rougher seas. But that only works, again, if you have this tall tunnel clearance. Another thing that the tall tunnel clearance buys us is the boat handles weight very well. Now, weight is always the traditional Achilles heel of a catamaran, right? The heavier you make the boat, then the lower it's sitting in the water and the more it's going to slam. Well, that's true because on boats with barely adequate tunnel clearance, when they're new and empty, by the time you pour on your gear and your passengers, you may only have 6 inches of tunnel clearance. So when you're underway, you're running fast, the more weight you put on, the more it's going to slam. It's sort of the opposite effect on our Buzzards Bays because they have such great tunnel clearance that the more weight that we put on our boats, generally the better they ride, because the more weight, the lower they sit in the water, and the less apt they are to lift, so that they can run a little bit faster in a little bit bigger seas before they start lifting. So that's really the byproduct of, or the biggest effect of added weight on our Buzzards Bays is they ride better. You know, you'll slow it down a little bit, you'll have a little bit more fuel burn the more weight you put on, but generally there's no real negative. You don't have that usual catamaran negative of slamming your tunnel because of weight gain. And while we're back here, I'll show you how they chose to mount their outboards on the Buzzards Bay 34 Moon Dancer. They have these unusual hydraulic outboard brackets that are a parallelogram design. Now, they didn't build these, but they actually worked with the original manufacturer and came up with the design and engineered the first few. And this company is Porter Products out of Florida. And so they went with them, and I know they're quite pleased with the product. Now, they mounted Yamaha 300 V6 outboards on these. Now, in order to use the Yamaha or any outboard with a traditional bullhorn steering cylinder, so if you could catch that a little bit, we've got the traditional bullhorn horizontal steering ram that when the outboard tilts up, it actually pivots that and pushes that down into the hull. You can see on our outboard transoms, we don't have a motor well for that cylinder to pivot into. So when you use a outboard like a Yamaha, like a Suzuki with that traditional horizontal bullhorn steering cylinder, you need to have a bracket. It doesn't have to be a big outboard bracket. It doesn't have to be a big, Armstrong bracket or something like that. A standoff bracket, as much as 6 or 8 inches, would do the job, allowing the outboard to tilt forward and clear of the water. Or if you use Mercury Verados with a very untraditional vertical steering cylinder, they don't need anything. They just bolt right to the transfer, which is one of the reasons we often use those on our recreational boats. While we're back here, I guess this is another good time to talk about our rear cross beam. So what's this big beam here? Again, another issue that I take with a lot of the let's call them production catamaran boats on the market is they have woefully inadequate connecting structure between the port and starboard hulls, keeping them from wiggling, right? So we have this large, looks like a tailgate. It's 14 inches here. It's about 2 inches thick. Has about the same laminate schedule as our engine transoms to mount, 1,000-pound outboards on it. And that's what keeps our hulls back aft very stiff. We have a full bulkhead forward, full crossbeam forward with a lot of fibers running horizontally, just like this. These boats don't move. We've been on a lot of cats where they wiggle around, they move around. Even in a boat shop, you might be jacking up one hull and you feel it twisting from the other, or you're seeing spider cracking or whatever. Our hulls don't move. They are very, very rigid, and you'll feel that in the seaway. And as a result, you have excellent longevity from your structure. All right, I'm here with Alan Willis in front of Moondancer, Buzzards Bay 34. Now, Alan actually is not the owner of Moondancer. Alan is the owner of Sea Level, the first Buzzards Bay, Buzzards Bay 32, launched in 2004, built in the period of 2002 to 2004. Now, Alan, you have to help me out with this. Now, you've owned, let's see, it was Chris Crafts. Let's skip the childhood stuff. So,
okay.
Pacemakers,
Chris Kraft,
Blackfin, 29.
yeah,
When
40,
the Blackfin first came out,
yeah.
right?
42-foot Krogan.
42-foot Krogan. So you went right. So we went from the Blackfin, fairly high-speed,
Yeah.
deep V offshore sport fishing boat, to the Krogan 42. This
Right.
heavy, very nicely laid out trawler, comfortable boat. And then you had a 29 Weber's Cove
Right.
down east boat.
Right.
And then you went to your Buzzards Bay 34, enclosed pilot house.
32.
I'm sorry, Buzzards Bay 32. Thank you. I should know this. Thank you for correcting me. And so you went from, again, high-speed, deep V planing
Right.
to a trawler, full displacement hull, to a semi-displacement down east lobster boat, to a high-speed displacement catamaran.
Right.
And you've run that catamaran up and down the East Coast, I don't know how many times now?
Almost every year since I owned it. I cruise at 24 knots, and I burn less than 9 gallons per hour both engines with a pair of twin 140 Volvo diesels, which I like diesels. I'm a diesel guy, but outboards have come a long way. And probably if I was to get another one, I'd get outboards. But anyway.
So could you explain, I guess, what it was like, say, your high-speed displacement catamaran hull compared to, let me pull out the Krogan from this comparison, but compared to the deep V of the Blackfin, which by all accounts is a wonderful but well-respected offshore riding vessel. And then on the other spectrum, the displacement hull.
No comparison.
Lobster boat.
No comparison. Once you own one of these cats, you won't want anything else, for sure. There's absolutely no comparison.
So if you're running at 20 knots, 3 to 4 footers or something like that, how would you compare the ride from those other boats?
No comparison. Dry, stable, very comfortable, and economical, for sure. Yeah. And this boat, for sure, it feels like a 40 when you get in it. Yeah. It's only 34 feet. It's hard to believe it's the same 34-foot hull, but it has a feeling of a 40-foot boat and the space. Can't wait to sea trial it.
So other than, let's say, seakeeping, ride comfort, which
Right.
seems to be what everybody loves about cats in general, but specifically what our Buzzards Bays do best, what other attributes do you like best about your sea level? Your
Well,
32?
well, mine I call it wash and wear because it's not real fancy, whereas the ones he's building now are a lot more fancy inside. But
Well, except for this one. This is
Yeah.
this one the other way,
Right.
all commercial.
that's why I like it,
Yeah.
I guess. I like the easy wash and
Right.
wear. No, it's the ride, the comfort, the space. I've got a queen-size berth, and which is hard to believe.
So 32 foot,
Right.
full pilot house,
Right,
galley up,
right.
lounge,
Yeah.
helm, co-pilot seat,
Yeah.
and you've got a queen size berth down below.
Plus a nice cockpit for fishing. A lot of room. Bring a lot of people with you. You don't even know they're in there. And no, for sure, there's no comparison.
What's the draft on your
Well, I only draw 18 inches with the drives up. I can put it right up on the beach, which is another nice feature.
Well, that's the versatility, right? So you've got a vessel that I would dare say would certainly outride those like your 29 foot
Any boat.
black fin. Of course, it's a smaller boat, but I would suggest it would probably outride a 40 footer. So you've got a 32 foot Buzzards Bay, 10,000 pounds, floats in 18 inches of water.
Right.
And generally regarded professional marine journalists yourself, thousands of sea miles, will
Right.
outride a 20,000 pound deep V.
Right. Everybody you take out, they ask you before you take them, what's it like? You got to ride in it. You take them out, and they first words, wow. Especially if it's 2 or 3 footers, It's you got to ride in it to get the real feeling.
We were doing our fuel efficiency runs, for every RPM, what's the speed, what's the fuel burn, what's the noise, and we were doing that out in Vineyard Sound, some
Right.
nasty
Right.
stuff that
Right.
they said on very well-known 45-foot deep V cruisers, 40,000 pound boats, they would have abandoned the test. And we ran through the whole speed range, and they were nothing short of amazed on what a high-speed, properly designed, high-speed displacement cat can do with a lot of tunnel clearance and a
Well,
good
it's
build.
aptly named. I was looking for a boat that would cross Buzzards Bay without beating you up too bad, which I used to do a lot of. And it's aptly named because Buzzards Bay can be really nasty in the afternoon, and the boat will do it.
I guess another thing we don't often talk about because we like all the life away from the dock, but your boat, the 12.5 foot beam, the props, you got diesels, Volvo
right.
dual props,
Right.
so you got 4 props in the water and
Right.
they're about 8 feet apart.
Right.
How does she handle around the dock?
Excellent. I mean, a lot of guys need bow thrusters. You don't need a bow thruster because, like you said, they're so far apart. And with the dual props, they really bite, and it gives you great maneuverability for sure, especially with a crosswind. So it works well.
So you've run your Buzzards Bay again from Maine to
Yeah,
Miami or
Yep,
the Keys,
the Keys,
Bahamas.
yep,
You've
Bahamas,
been up to
right.
Nova Scotia bringing
Right.
boats down with me.
right.
Thousands of sea miles.
Yep.
Have you ever had green water above the rub
No,
rail?
we've tried. I remember the first time he took me out on my sea trial, we went up to the west end of the canal and nasty stuff, 35 knots. And we tried to bury the bow, we couldn't. And I remember I couldn't wait to see it out of the water, find the cracks, but there weren't any. They're so stiff,
They are very stiff.
And the guys, when they pick them up, they say, "Ooh, how do I pick it up?" But you can pick it up with a forklift. It's so strong, not a problem.
Are you familiar with sneezing in catamarans?
Yeah, but boats don't sneeze. No, they do not. There's a lot of them, they put a nasal in them, I don't know why. All that does is create splash, and there's so much tunnel clearance that there's no sneezing at all, none whatsoever.
Anything else I can?
No, at this
can
point, I
ask you?
guess.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.